right, well, hello, and thank you for joining us today for Bentley Systems Career Talks. I'm Meg Davis. I'm the Industry Marketing Director for Bentley, and I'll be your moderator today. And I'm pleased to have with me joining us are Alicia McConnell, PE, who is the National Aerial Technologies Director at Michael Baker International. And as you can see, she's actually out in the field today, joining us remotely. And Ozzie Bravo, PE, who is the Business Development Director for Parsons Corporation. And both of them are going to be sharing their knowledge, their experience, and their insights about the transportation industry. Alicia has worked for Michael Baker for 11 years in roles including National Aerial Technologies Director, UAS Operations, and Civil Engineer, as well as roles as a civil engineer for Strand Associates and Oates Associates. In addition to his current role at Parsons, Ozzie's experience includes being a national manager and a project engineer at Terracon, a structural engineer at Constructive Engineering Design, as well as a research assistant and consultant for soil erosion engineering at Texas A&M University. So I'm going to ask Alicia and Ozzie to tell us a little bit about themselves and their background, and ask them why did they choose a career in transportation and road design. Alicia, would you like to start us off?
Absolutely, and thanks for the introduction, Meg. So really, my background, I grew up just loving to be outside and building things. My dad built houses over the summers. My parents were teachers. So I really got a hands-on experience with building, and I loved the process. So then as I continued to grow up, that's partially how I paid for college, some of those extraneous costs through college. And chose civil engineering because I loved math. And I really liked being able to feel like I built something. I remember my first internship, I got to be out on construction, and I thought it was the coolest thing. The construction was at the college that I went to, which was SIU Edwardsville. And I got to help build part of the college that gave me the education that was about to launch my career. So, fast forward, call it 6 years, and I really got into, some of the technology offerings that Michael Baker had. So they asked, and this kind of leads into some future discussion that we'll probably have on this call, but said, does anybody want to fly UAS, unmanned aerial systems, or drones for the company? And I just leaned in, I said yes. And a couple years after that, I was the program manager's successor. So I got to run my own program, and it is not where I thought I was going to be at all, but I get to use a really unique piece of technology and tool to help make inspections safer, more complete data sets, and all of that. And I get to use my engineering knowledge to apply those use cases and that technology in the right way. So it's been a really neat career, and who knows where I'll go next. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Ozzie, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Alicia's story because ultimately we all go into engineering because we have probably that affinity for the math, the sciences, but eventually a lot of times it turns into something to do with entrepreneurship or just curiosity. And that's something that, again, to Alicia's point, we'll touch a little bit later this morning. But in my story is a little bit different. I came to the United States to get my education in the University of Kansas, and that's where I did my bachelor's degree. And it was an exciting time when I arrived because I really thought I wanted to do civil engineering. And a lot of that stemmed from just my curiosity back in Peru, where I'm from, learning about infrastructure and at times how it was deficient and would prevent us from not always getting exactly where we wanted to be. And it just impacted the community quite a bit. By contrast, though, when I would visit, and I maybe got to visit 3-4 times when I was in school, the United States with my family just to take trips and vacations, I got to see infrastructure being that certainly, as I now have been practicing in this field for about 15 years, we could always do better. We could invest more, as we'll touch here as well during the call this morning. But certainly you got to see a very more organized systems, some really great bridges, highways, well kept, just overall infrastructure that you could be proud of having. And certainly that always sparked my curiosity about the civil engineering background and trying to at least attempt to do this degree for my career. And again, it's curious because there were engineers in my family, none of them on the civil side, but just wanting to make that impact because I saw how impacted my community back home and the difference that it could have here in the States, certainly was what maybe drew me towards civil engineering. And so that's a little bit about my story. Similar to Alicia, got very involved, not as much on the athletic side, but I used to live in the dormitories, being a resident monitor, a resident assistant, and to that point, just got creative as to how to be able to fund my education, volunteer, serve the community as I could, parallel to doing my civil engineering career or my degree, I guess, at the University of Kansas, and that led to different opportunities that would open up across my graduation, and then moving on to my first professional opportunities. To Meg's point, I did start my career initially at a small consulting firm, but then with a recession that came around 2008, early 2009, I was actually laid off. And what was really interesting at the time is that allowed me to then refocus and then consider a graduate degree, which I'm fairly proud of, having had the chance to focus on research, work on a master's degree, do a lot of different studies under my university at the time was Texas A&M University, and get exposed to a wider network and understand more project management, again, research, development, and ultimately being able to put together a project report that was I guess going to make a benefit out there eventually to society in some way, shape, or form. So that's a little bit about my path between graduating my bachelor's degree, going to work for a short time, and then having to pivot really quickly and be able to get an advanced degree, which again opened up different doors that maybe I didn't think would be opened 2 years prior when I was finishing my bachelor's. But ultimately, it all has turned out well. And again, part of the joy is in the journey, certainly.
Good point. Well, thank you both for sharing your background and experience. So before we get started with some of the questions I'm going to ask our panel here, we have a couple of poll questions for you and our audience. And we hope that you'll take a minute and answer those poll questions because they're going to help us understand you a little bit better and your interests. So Monica, I think you're going to be putting that in the chat for our audience. Is that correct?
Absolutely, in a moment.
Okay, all right. So I'll keep going, and if you can, I'll just take a minute and answer those poll questions. That would be great. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask Alicia and Ozzy, can you share some of the different career opportunities and roles that are available for road engineers? And can you talk a little bit about those roles and responsibilities?
Ozzy, do you want to go or you want me to?
You go ahead and tee us off if that's okay, Alicia.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, in transportation engineering, even just transportation in general, there's a lot of need for engineers, designers, construction workers, people to enter the trades, things like that. When I started off and got my civil engineering degree, I remember construction management was really, really tempting because I liked the construction side of things, just based on some of my history and work history. So, but I decided to go ahead and pursue civil engineering because I didn't figure I wanted to be, out in the elements all hours of every day. Civil engineering does give me the opportunity. As you can see today, I am out here. I'm on a bridge inspection. So I've even got one of our drones here with us that we just flew a bridge with. So, it gives me a lot of opportunities to use my degree, use my education, get out in the field, be hands-on, but also develop those sets of plans that go into building that infrastructure. I mean, there's a wide variety of different jobs and we need all of them. So part of this discussion is also one of the reasons I chose civil engineering, is there's always a need for engineers, and your skill set as an engineer or doing other transportation things really lends well to all sorts of other different types of work. You know, Ozzy, you're doing business development now, and you have to have that background knowledge, but you have to be able to translate, you know, the concept into almost a reality for a lot of our clients. So there's a lot of different ways that you're, depending on kind of your personal skill set, but also your educational skill set as to where you could go with that. But I'd like to think the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Alicia, because it reminds me at times when we are talking to some of our clients, you know, some of the directors at the different departments of transportation, as you know, may not have a transportation background, but they are leaders, right, in their organizations. It reminds me of that show, The Office, sometimes when Michael Scott would say, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, right? But ultimately, to your point, you want to put the terms and the practice area that we do into layman's terms so that it can be understood by society, right? Because our job really impacts our community overall, right? Like when you go to public meetings, right? You have to explain it to all these different people so they can understand their impact.
Yes, absolutely. And it's really important to have all those skill sets. I mean, it's even, I'll be honest, I hated writing, but the technical writing as well as some of the, I'll call it fluffier writing, is really important because you need to be able to paint a picture, but you also need to be able to write a technical report. So being able to, you know, use all of those different skills and share with all different types of members of the public what you're going to be doing, how it's going to impact them, and having some empathy with that. You know, a technical writing piece doesn't really get that across in the best way. So, you know, all those different skill sets, they're all needed.
Yeah, the other thing that I enjoyed about going into transportation, my background, I didn't go into much detail, but I did specialize when I did my master's degree in the geotechnical engineering field and a little bit of structures, because when you go to do a master's degree, you get to tailor your degree program. In undergraduate, it's very prescriptive, right? You have to follow the plan as it is. You take mostly your engineering classes, you take a few electives at the end, and obviously your general electives. But when you go to graduate school, you do get to tailor your degree program after you probably select an area of emphasis. So mine was geotechnical, but beyond that, I had the chance to select as many as 5 additional courses beyond the core geotechnical classes. And so I was exposed a little bit to the structures and the geotechnical side of things. And the reason why I bring that up is in transportation, you really bring all the different disciplines of civil engineering together. Alicia, she points out, she has done highways, bridge inspections, and they all come together because when you have transportation projects that are multidisciplinary, you have to also have what my role was, which was geotechnical engineering, hydraulics engineering, construction management, to Alicia's point. So again, that is what becomes ultimately, again, to Alicia's comment, the reason why you need to be a very good communicator and be able to really convey your message succinctly and expedited manner, because every discipline is around the table discussing what is going to make that transportation project successful ultimately.
I think that's a great point. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about how innovation and new technology has opened up new possibilities in the field and some of the career opportunities students can look into? And I'm thinking about not only what Alicia's been talking about in terms of drones and UAVs, but also reality modeling, digital twins, and digital delivery.
Sure. I'll jump in on this one too, because I'm sitting here with my handy little drone. You know, whenever we I got called into, I'll say the UAS program at Michael Baker. You know, there was a lot of kind of speculation on how we could use it, but there wasn't a lot of hard evidence as to where we would be able to apply the technology. And I think that's one of the coolest parts of being on that bleeding edge of pushing technology to its limits, is understanding how you can benefit the public, use, you know, taxpayer dollars more efficiently, but also improve the safety of the personnel on the project. So I'll use UAS as an example. You know, we are to a lesser extent just putting a camera on a flying vehicle. But if you think about how much that saves an inspector from climbing on the exterior of a bridge, under traffic, or being in a UBI, an underbridge inspection vehicle with a crash truck in behind it. Those are people's families. So if we can remove that, I guess, risk factor, one, to the traveling public, and two, to those workers, it's an overall improvement for everyone. So, leading back into why the technology is important and what opportunities there are, I have gotten outreach, as I'm looking to hire some additional pilots, and I have some new graduates that have taken a lot of UAS courses. They know how to build, maintain, know all the inner workings. But what I am looking for specifically is somebody who knows how to apply the knowledge gained from using a UAS as a tool. So that is a very specific example. But, for example, if I am doing a surveying and mapping mission using photogrammetry, somebody with a remote sensing background, somebody who understands photogrammetry and how that data is collected and processed, and how to improve the accuracy of those types of collections, that's what I need. I can teach people to fly easier than I can teach a pilot to be a photogrammetrist. So that's something that I'd like people to keep in mind too. It's not just about the technology, it's about the application of the technology. And being able to use a background of skill sets, whether it's civil engineering, remote sensing, photogrammetry, surveying, geography, environmental, all of those feed into using this technology as a tool to make our products and deliverables better.
Right.
I love hearing you talk, Alicia, about having some of these skills already developed because, and I will talk about it a little bit later, but it will go into the topic that I had brought up about during the undergraduate for those students that maybe have the chance to maybe get exposed to some research because probably a lot of their professors at their universities may already be exploring these topics, and that might allow them to be more well-rounded for the opportunity to then come work with you, I would think, because a lot of these work is cutting edge, right? It's being developed as you're also applying it in the engineering field, I would think.
Yeah. And, and Meg, I don't think I touched on some of that digital delivery side of things, but I remember whenever I first started, it was, I was learning my CAD programs. I had AutoCAD Civil 3D, I had MicroStation and the, SS4, I think I was on. There were all different programs for CAD, and now we're looking at really integrating engineering plans with contractors and the digital delivery side where there's not as much lost in translation. There's no perfect set of plans. There's no perfect implementation methods by a contractor. The best we can do is remove any doubt of how it was intended, and then goes back to the taxpayer dollars. But being able to utilize digital twins or 3D models of some of the data that we collect, that is extremely valuable. And it's even more possible today with the tools that we have, the technology that we have. So using UAS to collect some of that data, other types of cameras, vehicle mounted cameras, you've got mobile LiDAR systems, you've got static LiDAR systems, you've got SLAM units, the simultaneous localization and mapping. The technology is absolutely incredible, and it's improving at warp speed, and it's just being able to connect with it in a way that is useful to our clients, not just developing data to develop it, but being able to analyze it in a way that is helpful to a client to make good maintenance decisions.
Absolutely. And to add on to that about digital delivery, so a lot of the state DOTs are now coming out with mandates for digital delivery. And what that means is they're trying to move away from paper plans to paperless plans for all the reasons Alicia talked about, that it helps with the integrity and quality of the data. It helps with collaboration between the owner, the engineering consultant, and the contractor. So that's a really exciting area where students, can really learn this technology and make an impact.
Absolutely. In the long run, the operation and maintenance of those facilities by having a digital model is also going to be exponentially easier for practitioners like Alicia that are working on those type of contracts as well with the Departments of Transportation and keeping the general public obviously at safe. On On the geotechnical side, if I may add, one of the areas that I noticed has started to be more implemented or more considered and implemented is, and it's a class that maybe is not always required, but it is somewhat important maybe to possibly take in undergraduate or if you go do an advanced degree, and that is statistics. In engineering, again, we get very focused on getting to the right answer, getting to the exact numbers and whatnot, and that is important to some degree, certainly. But in geotechnical engineering, which has to do with the subsurface, the overall ground where you build foundations and you put different loads and weights and pressures on the soil, it is virtually impossible for you to be able to survey the whole ground, right? So you have to find discrete locations to actually sample the subsurface to then give engineering recommendations to put a foundation, to put loads from a bridge or put loads from a building or whatever type of structure that you might support. And so statistics ends up being actually a very useful tool, which you can learn if you have, in your undergraduate degree, take a class in statistics or any type of that type of analysis is important because statistically you're only going to get so much data, but then you're going to have to make generalized assumptions or recommendations based on what the data that might be limited that you're using. So ultimately, I see that also being very critical to be able to have a good understanding of statistics if you were to be interested in portions of the transportation practice, because again, within geotechnical engineering, it is becoming more and more useful, not only because then you can have a greater sense of confidence on the recommendations that you provide to support a bridge, a retaining wall, whatever type of structure, again, maybe a building if it's not in transportation, but another type of facility like that as well. Not only that, but the other one is in transportation, going back to transportation, a lot of times, or at this point in time, we are updating our infrastructure, which means that from time to time, we are maybe replacing old structures that might be 50, 60 years old with newer structures. So using the whole historical data to be able to then provide new analysis is useful because that way you can complement what was already existing if you can then put it into the model and use it again to do your calculations in addition to what might be new data that you're gathering now. When you're sampling the Earth probably hasn't changed in 50, 60 years, but that's why using the greater use of that data to actually be able to provide, again, more accurate recommendations, reduce the degree of risk or uncertainty can always be helpful. So that's where I see also the use of more statistical methods and analysis being used in the geotechnical side of transportation engineering as well.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about the types of companies that are interested in recruiting students for road design, transportation engineers. Maybe you can talk about, the different, whether it's DOTs or engineering consultants or contractors, and talk a little bit about that.
Do you want this one?
Go ahead, Alicia.
Oh, okay.
No, go ahead, please.
So first of all, Michael Baker's hiring. I know, Ozzy, you'll say the same thing, but in truth, we're at an age of, the infrastructure bill that came out. There's a lot of money to do a lot of projects for our aging infrastructure, and we need engineers to be able to do those designs. We need, construction inspectors, we need surveyors, we need all sorts of transportation personnel to be able to conduct and implement that work. So, and Meg, you did hit on all of them pretty much. I think Ozzy brought up a good one the other day, but there's your Department of Transportation, there's FHWA, there's research, and that one kind of evaded me, but Ozzy, when you brought that up, it's also really important because there are components of what we do that can be improved as technology improves, as we learn lessons over time. Maybe it's about material strength, maybe it's about construction methods, things like that. Those all take improvement. We're always a work in progress. So I think, doing the research side, but also consulting engineering firms, that's probably the most popular. And I was telling this team yesterday, whenever we were kind of having a check-in call, that, we've been looking to hire the past few years in our local universities everybody's spoken for. So if you're looking for a job, it's out there. And it's, it's tough for us to find people. So, that the job security around choosing a degree or a career path in transportation is a really solid one.
And I'll add one more to the list I should have added earlier, which is engineering software companies like Bentley Systems. So there is a wide variety, but Ozzy, please keep going.
Yeah, I would concur with Alicia. To be honest, I did not have the chance to work at a Department of Transportation or Inter one, but I certainly consider those organizations to be always very strong in providing a very well-rounded formative experience, maybe during an internship. It allows you certainly to try different areas, because going back to the comment we had earlier about in transportation projects, most every discipline of civil engineering is applied as part of the different tasks that need to be completed to be able to implement the project. So certainly that seems certainly one that makes sense to me. I used to work for a materials testing firm that worked closely with consultant engineering. They're technically consulting engineering as well, but they do focus a lot more on the actual field materials that then get to be tested to then be part of the ones that get constructed. So certainly, again, right now in transportation engineering, there is such a generational opportunity because of the funding we have received, that certainly there will be basically the chance for you to explore exactly what might interest you, or maybe even develop something that hasn't been explored yet.
And also pivot if you want, just like you did, Ozzy, and just like I did. It's, if something interests you, go for it.
Absolutely. We see that a lot in our industry, people moving from company to company, from a DOT to an engineering consultant to research. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So one thing we've touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to elaborate it a little more, is on the skill sets that a graduate would need. And I think we talked about this earlier this week, that it's both the hard skills and the soft skills. So would love to hear from both of you a little more about that.
Yeah, I can lead in on this, and I know Ozzy will have some good follow-ups here. I did touch on it a little bit earlier, but one thing I didn't, whenever I was in school, I really focused on my grades and getting my math right and making sure my labs were correct and all of those other things. And then, I got into some of the public meeting forums and things like that, and I had to take my plan set and turn it into graphics and, make it look pretty for the public, or if I had an issue and I needed a lead engineer to give me some guidance, I had to be able to tell them what my problem was, and being able to communicate. I wish I would have taken my public speaking class a little bit more seriously, because you get to a point where you're speaking to larger and larger groups of people, not necessarily at conferences, but even within your own company. You're leading a meeting, you have a client come in and there's 6 of them, and you've got multiples within your group. Being able to engage the group appropriately, these are all soft skills. So being able to work on that and communicating your needs clearly, or communicating what your ideas are clearly, so those ideas can be built upon. Those are extremely important skills. Your writing skills, I mean, not everybody's a great speller, but they're spell check. So get the ideas down, and make sure that you have a good foundation in that. And that's not to dismiss any of those educational skills that you need as well. Focus on your grades, because it does come back, and you will pull from them. I remember at my first job, we were doing a watershed analysis, and it was the time of concentration, and I was like, somebody said, "Oh, I think this is that farthest point," and I was like, "What? Oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. This is how you use it." So it was like we had talked so much about the theory, but then you enter it into a spreadsheet and it's just super fast. So I know things have changed, but that's, you really need to get a good grasp of the theory, have a good understanding of whatever it is that you're doing, and then apply those skills later. And both soft skills and those educational kind of hard skills are very important.
It's funny, Alicia, you've touched on 2 topics that just made me go back, right, 16, 17 years ago with the speech class. which was probably my top 3 class, which, as you know, is why I'm such a chatty person nowadays in what I do every day. And then hydrology, which was a class that provided a lot of challenges for me. But to your point, I took the class, did the best I could. I think I ended up with a B because I didn't grasp the material as well, but I did my best and I passed the course and moved on. When I went to do grad school, of course, I didn't necessarily choose any courses in that because my interests were more on materials, mechanics of materials and geotech structures. But to your point, it mattered that I had to complete the course and did it to the best of my ability because at some point, it may be needed, it may be not, but I need to do it. I needed to do it at the time, you know.
Right.
An item to add would be the curiosity. You know, you all are right now in undergraduate, and it is a great time. You know, there's a chance, obviously, to start to definitely focus on what's going to interest you as you become a young adult and you finish your university formative years. But don't forget to also focus on some of the, to Meg's point, the soft skills and the personal development, which is never lose that thirst for curiosity. You know, I mean, Alicia is a great example. She has been able to carve herself now a great role at her organization by being curious, applying new technologies, really leading edge technologies that right now are new in our industry. And that's because if you have the chance, and I certainly did that when I was in undergraduate, was if you can get the chance to be exposed to undergraduate research, or when you're talking to one of your professors and they're doing some sort of project that you can volunteer some of your time, take it. Why? Because when you go to work full time, there will not be as much time for you to have the chance to have some of that curiosity explored if there were other topics that were of interest to you. But when you're in undergraduate, if you can find the time, carve it out, because again, you never know what path it might take you towards, you know? So that's a bit of advice, certainly, as something that is important, because the curiosity will remain as a professional, maybe not in the sense that you might be able to do research being a full-time professional in a consulting firm or a DOT. Maybe you might in a DOT. Consulting is a little more challenging unless you're in a research and development role or a cutting-edge technology like Alicia is, but not every consultant, engineering firm, or contractor is going to be investing as much in research. So again, just something to have fostered in your undergraduate by maybe doing that, but always keep that curiosity bug alive, because you're definitely going to be getting the chance to maybe go down different avenues when you're delivering projects once you're actually out there already working as a professional. And the other item that helps with is also continuing to help you with being very organized. Again, that's a very important skill, because as you deliver projects, you will certainly have to honor deadlines, meet deadlines, and certainly organize a team, and together ultimately deliver the greater goal of whatever you're delivering for your client. And the best example of when you get exposed to do that certainly is usually in your senior design project or your capstone project. So make the most of that certainly as well, in trying to foster those skills, because again, they're going to help you in the long run.
Absolutely. So we did get the results in from the polls. So I'm going to tell you what the results are, because I think this will help Alicia and Ozzy as we continue in our questions. So the first question was, are you interested in a career in transportation infrastructure market sector? And if so, what areas? And the vast majority of you said civil. I think it was almost 86%. And 14% of you said planning. The second question we asked is, are you currently participating in an internship or plan to do so in the coming year? And 64% of you said yes, and 36% of you said no. And that's a really great lead into my next question for our panelists, is the value that you get out of an internship or summer work placement. And I know your companies, as well as Bentley, do internships, but would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in here. I will say that I loved school and I really enjoyed my classes. I loved the math associated with them, but the real reward was whenever I was able to get an internship and actually do some of that construction work. You know, it was a lot of materials testing. It was a lot of hauling wheelbarrows of concrete and crushing cylinders and doing slump tests and all that other stuff. But for me, I enjoyed doing that. And I also got to learn quite a bit about, the construction process. I'd built houses, but never, large infrastructure. I started off as an intern, and then I remember my first year out of school, I stayed with the same company. So that made the transition so much easier. And it's really great for a student to do this with the company. It's mutually beneficial because that student gets to see if they like that company, and that company likes to see if they like that student as a worker or a potential full-time employee. Fortunately, I was able to stay on with them. I loved working at that company. And I remember I did my first plan set as a junior engineer. And I remember thinking, why would I label this like this? Why did I design this like this? Like, this makes it hard for them to build. So getting the experience to make yourself a better engineer, the plan set was fine, but I got to talk to the contractor out there and say, how would you like to see this? Because I see now that this is confusing, but getting a lot of experience, the earlier you can get that experience, the more valuable you are, and the more quickly you can advance in your career. So I highly recommend them. Some of you may be too young for internships or whatnot, but I definitely recommend getting your feet wet and trying it out, see what interests you, and then maybe tailor some of your courses around your interests.
Yeah, I would concur. I mean, certainly by a process of elimination, you will be exposed at least to one of the, you'll probably have to take at least a few of the classes within the greater civil engineering educational program when while completing your undergraduate. So certainly getting an internship will be a confirmation, or maybe, just a way to just tell you, okay, well, this is an area that maybe is not as interesting to me. But certainly, certainly looking to do a summer work placement or internship will help you to be able to do that. Firms like Michael Baker, like Parsons, where I work, and many others that are hiring for summer interns as we speak, because the summer of 2023 will be here before we know it. Certainly have different departments as well. So one thing that I think is critical, and I wish somebody had given me this advice early on in my career, let's say you start an internship and it is a topic that for a few weeks you enjoy, but then suddenly you realize, well, maybe it's not as interesting. It never hurts to ask, hey, may I try something different? Because again, during the internship program, you get the chance to also say to your direct supervisor during those 8 to 10 weeks, I would like to try this. That's what you get hired for. But if there's something that along the way you see, well, I want to try this as well, certainly go ahead and ask for it. Now, I'm not suggesting that maybe you have a few days where you have menial tasks that don't seem as exciting to then ask for it. Obviously, think about it concisely, because it's not either about like, okay, I didn't like this, now I go to this, then I jump to that, then I jump to so. But ultimately, if you have a frank conversation with someone and ask, hey, I would like to maybe try a few more weeks left in my internship for water resources experience as opposed to maybe transportation or structural engineering, might as well go ahead and ask for that, because again, that is the place where you can comfortably get exposed to the civil engineering fields in a professional environment. It will give you a lot of the skills that we discussed in the previous questions as well, right? Time management, curiosity, organization, all the different attention to detail, all those things will become critical because you'll be exposed in a very safe environment to what it will be like after you finish with your education and go towards graduation. So certainly, again, now is the time, to Alicia's point, try, if you have enough of that those classes under your belt, to apply for internships and try to make sure to get that experience at this point in time.
That's great advice from both of you. Thank you. So we've been talking a lot about how important it is to be digitally skilled, to be using digital technologies. And given the results of our poll question, can you both talk a little bit about some of the technologies that are used by transportation professionals in their day-to-day work life?
Ozzy, do you want to lead?
No, Alicia, you go ahead, because I know you have here a few more minutes left, so I'd rather you get the chance to.
Sure. Yeah, and this goes back into, a lot of the technology available where I'd lean more on the software at this point. I talked about the hardware a little bit earlier, and, the UAS that we have out here, the static scanners, the mobile LiDAR, all of that. It's incredible technology, but that data is useless to us without the software to post-process it and perform analysis on it and things like that. So, Meg, you mentioned this as well for transportation engineers and transportation-minded individuals looking to graduate and get a job. Software companies are a good option too, especially if you're savvy, you're good at programming, you have a background in civil engineering. You know, it's really important to have that background of understanding how projects are built, how things operate in the field. I do recommend an internship and, even maybe a couple years at a consultant or a DOT, something like that, to understand what's necessary for that software to be implemented cleanly, I'll say. Everything has glitches, software, hardware, all of those things. But being able to understand like some of those nuances, but also the implementation portion of it is really, really important. So I'd say the technology around software, machine learning, AI, all of those that's what's next for us. We're already working on it. We're working on training some of these models to do automated detection of defects on bridges. There's a lot out there. So do your due diligence, find a good software company, somebody that has a good, clear vision and how they're going to kind of make an impact for clients and users, across the country. I would say that's probably the next one.
Right.
Yeah, I have nothing to add really. I think Alicia, I really like your response and exactly what you see as what we're already starting to see as trends in our industry. So thank you.
Great. So I wanted to ask you both, and Alicia, I think you've got a few more minutes before you have to leave. Okay.
Yes.
If you have any resume building tips, how you use LinkedIn, how you network for our students here, and I'll just say Ozzy is the most prolific LinkedIn individual I've ever seen. He's just awesome at it. So we'd love to hear from both of you because, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about communication, and it's about branding yourself and showing people who you are. So we'd love to hear that.
Absolutely. So I'll start. I do need to jump off in a few minutes, and I will offer, if anybody has any questions or anything specifically for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Meg, I'm sure you can connect us. But I wish you all well in your careers. I'll say that now. And then as far as, the next part here for kind of branding yourself, it's not necessarily a brand. It's really just kind of awareness in your interests. That's one of the ways that I find people that are a good fit for our company. You can kind of tell people's demeanor. And I know social media isn't always an exact representation of somebody, but like usually LinkedIn, if you can see the results of something that they're doing, if somebody post-process a data set and it looks absolutely incredible and they did it, then I'm interested in them. Those are good ways to do it. And as far as resume building, my favorite resumes are the ones that lead in telling me what they are looking for as well. I'm looking for somebody that's a right fit for my team, but just listing skills, you're proficient in Microsoft Word, you can use Excel, everybody can. So tell me what you're looking for, and that's going to make you a good cultural fit for my team, which then leads into, longevity at our company and being a good team member and making that experience better for everyone. I'm a firm believer that if you're happy where you're working, that's the quality of life aspect is more important than several of the other, kind of financial aspects and things like that. Obviously, we all deserve to get paid what we're worth. However, there's something to be said about loving where you work. So, stating right up the top what you're looking for, what you like to do, where your interests are, and maybe where you'd like to grow into. I really like those intro paragraphs. And then, skill sets, your, extracurriculars. Ozzy's mentioned this a couple of times. I was an athlete through college, so I really needed to balance my time and be able to schedule myself, manage myself, organize my time, communicate with my professors. And at my first job, one of the things they said to me was, we knew you were organized because you were an athlete. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily true for all athletes, but you know, in my case, I was a good team player. It was a team sport. I had to talk to my professors and let them know, hey, I'm missing for this game, all these other things. So, you know, one of the things I also like to ask in interviews is, how do you organize yourself? So I'd be prepared for that question. And even if they don't ask it, tell them these are the ways that I organize myself. And I found this to be really successful. It can be a wall calendar, it can be your phone, it can be any of those things, but be able to use multiple tools, because eventually you're probably going to be managing others, managing projects, managing clients, and showing that you can pull all those pieces together is very, very important.
Right, that's great advice, and thank you for being with us. I know you've got to jump off because you're in the field, you've got to go finish your job, but thank you for being with us, and we'll continue on with Ozzy with that question and a couple more.
Ozzy, you've got this under control. These next ones are all you. All right, thank you everyone, and thank you, Meg.
Thank you.
Bye guys. We'll see you soon, Ozzy.
Yes, I really like a lot of the tips that Alicia shared about the resume. I really like, I guess another topic I would add to formatting on a resume would certainly be, because you're coming out of an undergraduate with a very specific degree program, probably keep your resume to 1 page for a cover letter, or to what Alicia described, objectives, interests, what are some soft skills you have developed. They could maybe go on that cover letter, or they could go maybe on the additional skills that you have within your resume. But then the second page should really just be exactly that, a true resume, not longer than 2 pages. Again, between 1 page for the resume, where it shows what school you went to, what internship experience you may have had, what kind of jobs you may have been doing during your undergraduate years, right, to support yourself, to maybe have some sort of commitments beyond your academic commitments. And certainly, again, also the organization side of things. Those are important. If you are in the university setting, like what Alicia did with being an athlete, or like I did being a dormitory resident assistant at the University of Kansas, where I went to school. But in addition to that, I had another job that also allowed me to spend some time getting more organized, managing people, managing budgets for the other job that I had as well. So again, all of those skills are important to be described, at least in that succinct 1-page portion of your resume. So again, maybe at this stage in your career, as you begin your professional degree, your professional journey after your degree, I would say maybe 2 pages max. But certainly do expect to have some sort of introductory document, again, a cover letter, or some paragraphs to describe yourself, because that way you already have a chance to show 2 things. Number one, a little bit about your type of writing, how succinct you can convey your ideas. Number 2, maybe some of your personality as well. So that way, when you go to talk to these people in person, when you are having that interview with those individuals that might be looking to hire you, they already have a little bit of background about you and will have prepared, other than if they had just received 1-page resume with just your academic credentials and all the other things that maybe are important to you. Ultimately, it is what you see on this other page where you describe yourself that is ultimately going to allow you to have a successful journey as you enter your career. And looking into the journey side of things, again, social media has become a very prevalent way of us communicating in society, right? Just like we have the traditional social media to connect with our family, friends, and connections and acquaintances, LinkedIn has certainly become a very prolific platform for us in the professional realm to be able to be active. And so I encourage you all at the undergraduate level, certainly look to build a LinkedIn page. It's free, it's available to you, and then you can always carry that page as you continue to get different roles, responsibilities, recognitions, commitments, all of them. This becomes really sort of your resume as it continues to build. But most importantly, to Meg's point, it allows you, as you continue to build your career, when you go from being a engineering in training to then become a professional engineer, it will allow you to build a brand, right? So people can expect, if they're going to collaborate with you, maybe what they can see in a public forum, LinkedIn, what are you about? What are the things that interest you? Not only that, as you continue to move forward in your career, it will allow you to have easier connections to find people that you maybe want to be able to collaborate with in the future. So again, LinkedIn, make sure to treat it as it is, a professional forum, a professional platform, but do look at it in a way that it will allow you to connect with people like myself, like Alicia, like Meg, because we are working professionals in this industry, and who knows, we could find a way by you being connected to us to introduce you to someone that you eventually want to be able to have the chance to be able to talk to about a future opportunity in the industry and whatnot, because that's what LinkedIn does. It ultimately makes your network feel a lot smaller so you can have a connection to different people that might be of interest to you so you can pursue your career opportunities as you wish to realize them as you go into the workforce. So yes, definitely LinkedIn is a great tool. Make sure to take a professional picture. So a lot of times lately, I think during the career fairs, they offer for the students a professional shot. So make sure you know to wear a shirt or a tie or a blazer, whatever you feel, but certainly try to keep it in a somewhat professional manner, again, so that you can convey yourself as that type of individual.
And I'll say that's how I met Ozzy, was through LinkedIn, because we had mutual connections and I kept seeing his posts talking about projects he was working on, talking about meetings he was going to, and I was so impressed with him. So you just never know where LinkedIn can lead you. So Ozzy, one more question for you. Can you recommend any organization websites for our students so they can stay updated about key trends and innovations in the industry?
Oh, yes. Off the top of my mind, I had thought of one which had to do with a little more on the educational side, but so a few years ago, the American Society of Civil Engineers made a film called Dream Big, and they have a lot of good materials about where the engineering industry as a whole, the civil engineering industry is going towards, and so that might be a good resource initially. Dreambigfilm.com/education, because there you can maybe find some topics where they discuss the trends and the different again, where they see the civil engineering progressing towards. But overall, ASE.com, certainly the Professional Society of Civil Engineers in the United States and globally, really, has a really good pages where they focus different committees so they can discuss what might be some trends that we're seeing within the civil engineering profession and overall.
Very good, thank you. So that was the last question I had. Monica, I don't know if we have any questions from the audience. We've got just a couple minutes. We might be able to take a couple of questions.
Yes, the chat box is open. We can take questions now.
Okay, great. So if you'd like, just type your question into the chat box and we will try and answer it for you. This is a great opportunity to get some of your questions answered, things you're thinking about in terms of your career and what you're looking into.
And in my experience for all of those attending, because I did do graduate school as well, in addition to non-undergraduate, if you have any questions about that as you navigate what might be the next stage after your undergraduate career, please feel free to ask about that as well. Because again, I always wanted to get there. I just didn't get there exactly as I thought I would get there, but it was something that I certainly felt particularly proud about completing in my career. And it's opened doors as well, maybe different from if I had not done a master's degree.
Okay, great. All right, we have a few questions coming in. One was, can the presenters share their LinkedIn profile so you can be followed? So Monica, I'm sure you can share Ozzy and Alicia's LinkedIn profile with the folks afterwards.
Absolutely. We'll do that.
Okay. Next question is, what are some skills students should work on that can help them jumpstart their career?
I would go back to some of the ones that were touched on initially. I think I see Bilal Akhtar. Thank you for asking that question. Certainly, again, organization and attention to detail are going to be key. I mean, as you enter your engineering career, it is important, all the knowledge you have acquired as an undergraduate professional, is very important. It will be valuable as you start your career. But certainly in those first few years, you will be definitely coached or asked to be aligned to work with a team. When you do your homework right now in undergraduate, you do it on your own, right? And when you take your exam, you do the exam on your own. Once you go into transportation, you collaborate with others. And so you have to then work about being accurate in the portion that you're provided, right? Let's say the pie is split into 12 slices, you will, and maybe Bilal, you will be in charge of only 1/12 of that project. Well, you need to pay attention to your tasks, attention to your quality, and be able to relate to the other 11 disciplines so that together you can deliver that transportation facility, that project to your client, to the community that ultimately is going to be using it. So again, attention to detail in what you're focusing on initially, and being able to have that strong communication and coordination skills will be very important in my mind to really differentiate you. Why? Because like anything, when you see anybody maybe that we watch on TV, right? I mean, we watch so many sports these days, but a lot of times if you put great effort and have great attitude, those are the intangibles that will allow you, to your point, jumpstart your career and allow you to be known for, okay, this person is dependable. This person I can commit to completing the tasks as they relate that they would do them as well. So I would say those are probably two of the main things as you start your career to really differentiate yourself apart. Hopefully that helps you see a little bit about what I experienced.
That's a great answer. And we've got another great question here. I like this one. What was the hardest thing to overcome or learn when you first got into the industry?
Yes, absolutely. I love that question as well, Evan Jablonski. Thank you for asking that. It's funny because actually the hardest thing for me initially when I first got out of school and started my first professional engagement as a civil engineer was understanding the use of the technology. At that time, I was very proficient with one specific modeling software, but then I was asked to model with another software at the time, and I wasn't as proficient. And it gave me a lot of difficulty initially, Evan, because in a short time, I was being asked to then kind of switch my way of thinking, right? Because different programs, as you know, work differently as you put the inputs and then you get the data and information out. And what that told me, Evan, initially was, well, technology is important and it is a tool and it is very important to master that tool. However, more important than that is to understand why you need the tool and not always forget that why you're applying this tool to make your engineering decision maker much more expedited and a lot more succinct and easier to convey to your other peers. As I mentioned a second ago to Bilal, when you divide your task, as it needs to also correspond maybe to who your other disciplines are also delivering on the project. So that was a very hard thing for me. Understand that technology is important, but ultimately you're still an engineer and your role is to make decisions, to be very, very critical about how you're going to take the information you're giving and what is the actual output that you're going to be providing. Technology, the tools are important, but they're not what made you an engineer. What made you an engineer in transportation, in civil engineering, is your decision making, your experience, and being able to always ask, why are we doing it this way? Why do I make that decision? Why do I make that assumption? Why? Always think about that, because ultimately that's what will ultimately allow you to probably end up being successful, differentiate yourself as a critical thinker, because ultimately our roles in our professions are here to solve problems, solve challenges for our communities, by communities, I mean, for the departments of transportation, whoever you're working for, your client, because that ultimately is supposed to be making life easier for someone down the road. So hopefully that helps answer your question. And again, just always keep the end goal in mind. And again, ultimately you're an engineer and you're here to have critical thinking to be able to find solutions, and don't get lost in the tools and the technology. They're important, but use them to your advantage. Don't let them overwhelm you so you don't remember what the end goal of what you're here to do, right, in your professional career or journey.
Great answer. Thank you so much. Well, we are at the top of the hour. We thank you all for joining us, and we especially thank Ozzy Bravo and Alicia McConnell for being here with us today, and hope you join another Career Talks in the future.